for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. My name is Darren Gibson. I'm your co-host.
I'm Katy Steele.
And I'm Jack Prince.
Boy, what a nice day. What a nice week it's been here in Michigan, hasn't it?
Finally.
Silver linings of climate change.
Yeah. Silver linings of climate. We'll have to use that. That's definitely a point. Oh my gosh. Well, speaking of, we've got quite a few stories to talk about. The $1.9 trillion stimulus package has been passed finally. We'll talk about that. Savannah Guthrie gave an interview last night with Janet Yellen. I've got a clip of that we've got to play because Savannah Guthrie's showing her privilege again.
Yeah.
We have a couple of Hammer Time awards to dish out this week and plenty more to get to. Before we get started on today's show, a couple reminders that you can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Twitter at Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime you like at Spreaker.com or at Stitcher.com. Just do a search for Southpaws there. You can find us on Apple Podcasts by doing a search for Southpaws. Once you found our logo, you found us. Actually, Apple Podcasts is the recommended method to listen to the show. And please leave us a 5-star review because that does help with our views and everything. You can also listen to the show by going to our Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and YouTube accounts because we send links to our weekly episodes to those pages. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI-FM in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, WOOL-FM, Bellows Falls, Vermont, KEPJ-FM, San Antonio, Texas, and WRWK-FM, Midlothian, Virginia. So make sure you check us out there. And also make sure that you donate your time and or money to your local Pacifica station because they could always use the help. All right, we're getting enjoyment here, Jack, because Stella and Rascal are having a little bit of a wrestling match.
Oh, yeah.
Just slapping him around a little, aren't you?
The Beauty and the Beast there, I know.
So true.
Yeah, which one is which?
I was going to say Stella plays both parts, actually.
They're both really sweet cats.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, my gosh. Well, let's get on with the show here, and I guess we might as well just start out with the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. And it's got a lot of things in the package, one of which is $1,400 stimulus checks if you make $75,000 or less a year, if you're filing your income taxes as a single person, $150,000 if you're a married couple. I believe it's $80,000 if you're head of household. So it's got all sorts of other things, funding for distributing vaccines, infrastructure, just a whole gambit of things. Well, there's been some criticism, mostly on the right, Mitch McConnell being one of them, but I want to play this audio. Janet Yellen, who is now the Treasury Secretary, was just confirmed within the last couple of weeks by the Senate, was interviewed by Savannah Guthrie on Thursday night. And I want to play a little clip of this interview. So This runs about 1:50, so I'm going to play the whole thing and then we'll get comments on it.
You and the president have made the argument that this is a time to go big or go home, that one of the lessons learned from the last Great Recession was doing too little, being too stingy with relief meant a longer, slower, more painful recovery. That being said, even some progressive economists say this stimulus is up to 3 times bigger than it needs to be. Have you overshot the mark? Are you spending too much?
I don't believe we've overshot the mark. I think that this package is the right size. We put it together by asking, what are the needs of Americans? Where do we need to get money and how much to relieve all the suffering that's occurring in the economy?
Just to drill down on this a little bit, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is independent, says the economy is right now about 3% below its potential. So that's $600 or $700 billion. We're about to spend $1.9 trillion. Again, it's almost like if you had a headache before and you took one aspirin, you knew that wasn't good enough. But that doesn't mean next time you take the whole bottle. Is it just far too big with temporary fixes that don't address those underlying problems?
This is a package that addresses the pandemic and helps people get to the other side intact. We don't want to have people be scarred by long spells of unemployment, being out of the labor market because children can't go to school. We want to get the economy back operating in a normal way. And then we do have long-run challenges to address, and we're preparing to do that. Infrastructure, education and training, climate change, other longer-run priorities will be on our list to address next.
Well, it's funny that Savannah Guthrie didn't have any objections when Donald Trump and the Republicans were giving $1.9 trillion to large corporations.
Yeah, exactly. You mean you're talking about the time when Democrats actually voted for Trump's package? I don't know how many, but we got zero back in this plan.
Of course not.
And let's be clear, though. I mean, $1.9 trillion, the crumbs that they're throwing the workers is not the majority of this bill. This bill is going to the large corporations, too. I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Instead of let them eat cake, it's here, throw some crumbs at them.
Right. The Wyoming Housing Commission spent our CARES Act money on a new maintenance vehicle last time. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine where any money they get from this bill is going to go. But probably not to any of the people that need housing.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a story here. This is Forbes magazine. Sarah Hansen, writing for Forbes, dated March 12th. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen again defended the massive scope of President Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which has drawn criticism from some economists who believe it is too large. Congressional Democrats used a special legislative process to pass the rescue bill over the objections of Republicans, many of whom said federal spending on such a massive scale is wasteful and irresponsible given the ballooning federal deficit and the fact that the economy is already showing signs of improvement. In an interview with NBC News' Today Show that aired on Friday, Yellen said she believes this package is the right size, adding she doesn't think the administration has overshot the mark on what the American economy can handle. Let me remind all of you that Savannah Guthrie, 1, is not a journalist. She is a lawyer by trade. 2, she is a millionaire. So she's worried about her taxes going up. And 3, guess who she's working for? Comcast, the parent company of NBC. Guess what's going to happen to their taxes? What they're afraid of. They're going to go up, which they should.
But I just have to get this out of the way because the 12-year-old boy in me has to mention how funny it is hearing Janet Yellen debate the perfect size of the package and overshooting the mark. After the third time I heard that comment, I was like, geez, this is really, the 12-year-old boy in me has got to say something here. That's just the right size. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Yep. Also, according to the Forbes article, it's not the first time she's advocated for big spending in spite of concerns that Biden's flagship rescue plan has the potential to overheat the economy, trigger dangerous inflation, and push government debt to unsustainable levels. Well, let me just add, too, The government's printing money out of the air. It's a fiat currency. It's not tied to gold. It's not tied to silver. It hasn't been tied to anything for decades. They're just printing it out of the air. So for them to complain about that is ridiculous.
And she actually says that she wants that the plan is to address all of the suffering that's happening in the economy. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wait a minute. So we want to make that, we want to make those paper bills feel better.
How does that stack up with the data that shows that CEOs across the board have made huge pay increases in profits during this time of suffering? Exactly.
Well, there's a meme going around social media, and I've shared it on my personal Facebook. Michael Dell Computers, made a comment that when in history has an economy worked where you've taxed over 70%? He says it hasn't. It's never worked.
For decades it worked in the United States.
It absolutely did. The top tax tier during the 1950s, during Dwight Eisenhower's presidency, was 92%.
Yeah.
Kind of set us up for, a good 50 years of having opportunities.
It sure did, yeah.
Yep. I'm not a big fan of Eisenhower because of that Republican thing, but I'll give credit where credit's due. If it wasn't for the 92% under Eisenhower, we wouldn't have a federal highway system. We wouldn't have anything that represented the economy the way that it was in the 50s. It was robust. You know why?
You wouldn't have a closing speech from a leaving president warning of the unequivocal dangers of the military-industrial complex. I haven't heard any president echo Eisenhower's words.
Exactly. Yeah, you want to know why this worked? It's because businesses actually cared about this country, and they didn't mind paying taxes. Neither did the rich. Because here's what companies would do. They would actually take their profits and reinvest in new technology. They would reinvest that money into expansion. You know why? Because it lowers their tax base.
Right.
Then they don't pay less. But they're still helping the economy by building up their business and hiring more people. Mm-hmm. It's funny how that works. But instead, we get to the 1980s, and Ronald Reagan, the grandfather of conservatism, decides, we got to get rid of the tariffs. We got to lower the top tax tier. And guess what's happened since then? All the jobs have moved overseas.
Well, they're still reinvesting into their companies, but they're reinvesting in robots. They're reinvesting in things that are going to take our jobs. Mm-hmm. They're reinvesting in themselves, not the economy.
And they're also taking record profits home through shareholder dividends.
And keep in mind that, when 6 people own everything, these people don't have any ties to Grand Rapids, Michigan, or to the United States. Mm-hmm. They don't care where they end up spending their money. They're not trying to help our local economy, which is the only thing that's going to help us. But we keep doing it, giving all these billionaires money and then giving them our money and letting them take it back home and spend it where they want.
Absolutely. I'm going to continue this article from Forbes. Yellen said, quote, "This is a package that addresses the pandemic and helps people get to the other side intact. We don't want to have people be scarred by long spells of unemployment, being out of the labor market because children can't go to school. We want to get the economy back operating in a normal way." End of quote. So
we want to exploit your labor.
Exactly. Pretty much. Larry Summers, an economist who served in the Clinton and Obama administrations, wrote in the Washington Post last month, quote, "I am all for doing everything necessary to help the direct and indirect victims of the pandemic, but I do not think the case has been made that this requires the proposed level of total stimulus." End of quote. Well, once again, writing for the Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Guess what's going to happen to his taxes? Bye-bye, Jeff.
Well, hey, come on. Larry Summers' pedigree. He was right out of Wall Street when Obama picked him up.
That's very true. Absolutely. Yellen said $1,400 stimulus payments will start hitting bank accounts this weekend, echoing Thursday's comments from the White House. Biden signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan into law Thursday afternoon. The package includes $1,400 payments for eligible Americans, $300 weekly unemployment benefits. It was actually supposed to be $400, but the conservative Democrats like Manchin, like Kyrsten Sinema, said, no, that's too much. It continues a major expansion of the child tax credit, rental assistance, funding for vaccination distribution, and aid for state and local governments. Democrats are celebrating the new bill as one of the most consequential federal anti-poverty efforts in history. No, if you want to have an anti-poverty effort, bingo, right there it is. Raise the minimum wage.
Oh, my gosh. So simple. It's so simple.
Yeah, yet you had 8 Democrats side with every single Republican against Bernie Sanders' bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
The whole world agrees that we can stimulate the economy by putting money into it, into the workers' pockets. But they don't want to actually make that a regular plan?
Well, that's not one they can disguise somehow and actually get the money back into the hands of corporations.
Yeah, that's true. That'd be like taking the whole bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish Savannah would take the whole bottle. Oh, did I say that out loud? Yeah, I can't stand her. The word that I used for her this morning on Facebook, I can't say on FCC airwaves. I hate her guts.
She's not a run.
Right. She's not a run.
She's 6'2". She's not a run.
Truth.
Did you see, what was it, Stockton, California, that was doing a pilot program where they were giving $500 a month universal basic income for like 125 people?
I did see somebody was doing that.
And guess what? Those people did not leave their jobs. No, they became more productive. You know why? Because when you don't have to worry about whether you're going to pay the light bill or not, that makes you more productive. You can focus on things other than, are they going to come and take my house next month?
When you have a washer and dryer at home and don't have to walk your clothes to the laundromat, and when you have a car so you can drive to work, and when you have a phone so you can, call and do the things you need to do, like these things that people don't have makes it 10 times harder for them just to get to their job. Mm-hmm. They've already had a day's work.
Exactly.
So yeah, you give people want to work. That's the thing. I'm so tired of this narrative that we don't want to. People naturally by nature want to work. We do.
Yeah, and people want to be paid an actual living wage.
Right. That's the thing. If we're going to go do work for somebody else, we want the value of our labor. But I think instinctually, whether there was a capitalist society or companies or anything, I think people are inclined to work. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
If we incentivized taking care of other people versus ourselves.
Yeah. There used to be the feeling that working produced security. The longer you worked, the relationships within the job, and the job had synergy. As opposed to any relief. Why would somebody say that the relief is their security? Because it's so fickle. I mean, it could stop at any time.
Right.
I don't understand how people can say, what was it, another $100 a month, the difference between $300 and $400.
Like it makes a difference.
Yeah, so it's lame, and it's, again, a Republican talking point they've been on for so long.
Mm-hmm. And that people do eat it right up. They hear it enough times, and they're just like, yeah, that's true.
Oh, gosh.
Had a friend of mine over the other day. She just had a baby. He's about 3 months old. She's been on unemployment since COVID because most of the time she couldn't work because of pregnancy and couldn't go back. But she's got family members shaming her right now about being on unemployment so long. And I said to her, you got to turn this around on them. I said, you can't take that from them. I said, you just explained to them that you found a loophole. Mm-hmm. And as long as they're going to keep going to work and paying those taxes so you don't have to, I mean, you'd be dumb. to go to work, right? I was like, that's how you got to play this. Wow. I can't wait to hear how that conversation went.
Yeah. I get tired of hearing the TV announcer, the pundits say, well, it's going to take 2 years before we get back to normal. Mm-hmm. I go, back to normal when the people are still unable to make either their prescription payment or their mortgage payment. Back to normal?
Yeah, normal is just us showing up to work for them. That's all they ever saw, and that's all they want to see again.
Right, as if normal was on some high hill somewhere. It's ridiculous.
I know. It's sick.
It is. It's really disgusting. Savannah Guthrie just really pissed me off this morning.
I can tell.
Yeah. Can we lighten the mood just a little bit, kind of sort of lighten the mood, because we might as well just get into our next segment here, but we do need to play the appropriate music.
Stop. Hammer time.
Oh, yeah. It's hammer time. It is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got 2 winners this week, so every time that we have 2 winners of this award, we have to play this.
Double douche. Who is that guy? Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy sh**. Exactly right.
I love it. And by the way, if you haven't seen Roadhouse, folks, you really need to watch that movie. You can actually find some things in there that pertain to actual true life, like the rich guy trying to take the town over for himself and the people fighting back, and they kill the old guy. God.
It's a real feel-good story.
Yeah, it's a very good feel-good story. It most certainly is. This is not, unfortunately, a feel-good story. Jack, you put me onto this. This is Jordan Williams writing for The Hill. This is dated March 9th, right out of Texas. A Republican lawmaker in Texas has introduced a bill that would allow the death penalty for women who have abortions. So winner number 1 this week is Texas State Representative Bryan Slaton.
Good.
He said on Twitter, quote, "Today I filed HB 3326 to abolish abortion in Texas. The bill will end the discriminatory practice of terminating the life of innocent children and will guarantee the equal protection of the laws to all Texans, no matter how small." End of quote. No, you douchebag. That's not a child. Not until it's out of the womb. Try again.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. I am sick of these people.
Is the amount of Bible thumpers down there that are going to get all excited over this. I mean, really, there's enough wind in his sails that it's a viable piece of legislation. And, the other thing is, 253 pieces of legislation to restrict voters' rights and close voting booths on Sundays, et cetera, et cetera. There's a wave of Republican legislation. They couldn't win at the box.
Well, it's because they have big data behind them, too, right now, Jack. They're pushing these stories and these memes and everything through all these propaganda Facebook groups they've got going on. My right-wing friends this morning were sharing memes talking about, I hope all my friends who agree with this will share. And then it says, babies' lives matter. Oh. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. It's so obvious. They're just trying to steer the conversation right as they're drafting this legislation.
You know what? I'm going to be controversial. I haven't been controversial in a while, so I'm just going to lay this right out here. You know what's wrong with the world right now? One word. Overpopulation! Quit having babies! It's that simple. Oh, my God. Drives me nuts.
I mean, it could be that simple, but we can't even get birth control, Darren. Give us a break.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Because guess what? The Republicans don't want women to have birth control.
We're not allowed to say no to sex because
Yep.
Then we either get divorced or fired.
The Republican sex ed class is still centered on abstinence.
Yeah, exactly.
Which has never worked.
Right. Well, somebody's better draft some legislation for the death penalty for anybody that ever tries to touch me again with these kinds of laws coming up. Not happening.
Under House Bill 3326 in the Texas legislature, a person who has an abortion or performs an abortion could be charged with assault or homicide, which is punishable by death. This is according to reporting from the Texas Tribune. Slaton's legislation also says that certain parties may have to testify in cases of death or bodily injury to an unborn child, and that offers immunity to people who testify.
These men are about to find out how many of us would rather off our damn selves than have their child.
Yeah. The Texas Tribune also reported that the legislation also directs the state's attorney general to, quote, direct a state agency to enforce those laws regardless of any contrary federal statute, regulation, treaty, order, or court decision, end of quote. The bill would ban abortions and fertilization. Right now, in Texas, most abortions are prohibited after 20 weeks. So as soon as that sperm hits that egg, you better not have an abortion. By the way, Slaton's proposal is not the first time a Texas lawmaker has proposed the death penalty for abortion. Back in 2019, Texas State Representative Tony Tinderholt introduced a similar measure classifying abortion as a homicide. The legislation comes as Republican states seek to aggressively restrict or ban abortions in an effort to get the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. They've got GOP here. We're never referring to the GOP ever again because there is not a goddamn thing grand about that party. Not anymore. I don't think there ever has been.
Grand Rapids.
No,
There you go. Yeah.
That's all I can come up with.
Yeah, Rapids. We'll just call it Rapids.
But this whole epidemic of legislation, people should realize under the distraction of the COVID and so forth and the supposed tax, but voting fraud, they think they have cover. They really think they can. Look what the governor in Florida is doing. He just has on the table
they do have cover.
Ago,
it's going to go through.
The end of public schools. That voucher is the absolute death nail in the coffin for public schools in Florida. And I don't see hardly any
Nobody
mention
is
of it.
paying attention. Nobody sees it. The media is talking about, what am I hearing about Cuomo? Right? Because this is also being pushed by big data. I have no doubt in my mind.
About the royal family.
About the royal family. They're talking about all of these different things. But even if we focus on legislation in Congress right now, does it matter? Are we too late when they're technically working for each other more than us? Every single one of them is going to help each other before us. Yeah. So what, are we playing right into their hand by even looking at that shit? Pardon my mouth. But I mean...
Yeah, exactly.
What are we doing?
We all held our breath at the near climax of democracy on January the 6th in Washington, right? And now in the post, I guess, reestablishment days of so-called normalcy, they're going to get their way anyway to hit democracy in the head with these 300 bills.
And nobody has said a word about the fact that there's been no accountability for any kind of law enforcement protecting the Capitol building. So if we don't even have that, then what is law if there's nobody to enforce it? What is it besides a waste of our damn time? Sorry. I just don't understand why we're so focused on these things that won't matter.
Make no difference.
Yeah, if we let these other things go.
Yeah.
By the way, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson signed a bill into law Tuesday banning abortions unless it's to save the life of the mother. No rape clause, no incest clause. Oh, no.
Here's my question, though. We had protesters get arrested this week in Grand Rapids for refusing to obey the law.
Supposedly. Yeah,
allegedly refusing to obey the orders of law enforcement.
They were blocking traffic. Bullshit. They were.
Here's my question. If law enforcement tells me to go take my clothes off and have sex with them, do I have to do it? If I don't, can they arrest me? Because they have absolute discretion.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing we really... Basically. Yeah.
So no matter what we're doing in court, no matter what, if we have a militarized police department with no accountability and absolute discretion, we are wasting our time and we're idiots.
Yeah, there's a history of these arrests that are ill-founded. Going back, I was a professor at a school here, and it cost me a job. I was arrested for inciting a riot.
Oh, wow.
I stepped onto the street when Bush, this is way back, when Bush came to town, I don't know if you remember, and they threw my daughter on the hood of a car. The police did.
Oh, my gosh.
So I stepped on the street. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
2 days later, it was dropped. All the charges were dropped for about 10 or 15 people. But it scares the crap out of the people at the moment, diffuses the protest. It sends a message because the public doesn't get the retraction. They don't find out that the case was dropped.
They only see the first charges.
Exactly.
I was originally charged when I was arrested protesting. I was originally charged with resisting arrest. It was a felony charge of resisting arrest and like aggravated, basically. They were and we had sat down and we were Indian style. Like there was no way they could have said that we were aggressive. And they ended up dropping and lowering the charges later. But like you said, there's no retraction. People don't see that.
No, of course not.
And when they have that absolute discretion, and we're all acting like, oh, you just got to go through the process. I'm like, I had a girl come on Facebook to me the other day and tell me that I was just crazy acting like the Democrats and the Republicans were the same. and that if I,
But they are.
I know, if I weren't just a drama queen, basically, she said, I would look into what it would take legislatively and through process-wise to get Eric Prince back here into court. And I said, lady, I don't think you're getting it, but there's no legislation you can draft, Democratic or Republican, that's going to get this guy back from the UAE.
No.
Okay, to face this accountability. He owns the military that you are telling me would be holding him accountable. What makes you think that will ever happen? Like, there's pragmatism and there is lunacy.
Yep.
You're being stupid if you think that just sitting back and waiting with pragmatism is going to give you some solution to that problem.
Mm-hmm. No, I know.
Yeah. Katy, have I played this for you? Since you've been talking about the woman coming after you on Facebook, that they're not the same. I have a clip. This is from Southpaws, July 22nd, 2015. This is Joe Elder arguing with Nathan Kettle on the show.
Oh, fun.
Saying, one, that both parties are the same, and two, predicting that the Democrats were going to screw Bernie Sanders out of the primary. So, tell you what, let's go back into history here. Let me play clip number one.
20-second response.
Go for
Number
it.
one, only have voted for one libertarian in my life. Number two, been extendedly disenfranchised by the Democratic Party, having grown up in a Democratic household and being consistently disappointed in their effort and consistently disappointed in the fact that they do not go after. Number one,
because they
don't represent
act like Republicans.
No.
Up at the highest levels of the Democratic Party and the federal government. Yes, some of them act like Republicans. That is your only argument against the Democrats, is that they occasionally act like Republicans.
We will see. We will see. Last thing I'll say here, we'll see how good the Democratic Party is and how faithful and how fair they are and how illustriously better they are than all other parties when they screw Bernie Sanders over in his own Democratic caucus. You will see. We'll see. You guys will say that they won't, but you have a little pitter-patter in your heart knowing that will flippin' happen, my friends. Because it's a fixed game, and they both suck.
And
both parties
if they do
suck.
it at the highest levels of the federal government, yes, the Democrats do. Some of the Democrats do act like Republicans.
And if they do that to Bernie Sanders, you can guarantee I will be the first one to call them out by name and tell them what I think about them.
Yeah, well, get ready, because it'll happen.
And guess what? I was the first one to call them out on their bullshit. And what did I get for my trouble? I got the chair of 3CD calling my boss, telling me to take me off the air.
Oh, yeah, I believe
that is a guaranteed true story. Because
Bob
Goodrich told me about it.
Yeah. I used to have a field day calling into the kettle show. Remember what was that called? The boiling kettles or something?
Yeah.
I called them the boiling pots.
The simmering pots, yeah.
Yeah.
that was a gold clip, I just got to say that.
Well,
if that were me, I would have that on my story for the rest of my life.
I got one more clip to play, and then we'll drop.
My issue is I'm not saying they're the same. Let's make a basketball analogy from it. The two-party system, for some reason, we have Dems and reps alike thinking we're comparing Michael Jordan to some average player and saying, look, here's the great group. Here's the terrible group. Mm-hmm. This group's way, way, way better. I mean, we're talking the greatest ever. This group's the worst. They're awful. This is Horace Grant compared to MJ. I'm saying both parties are like Steve Kerr and Tony Kukoc. Irrelevant. Not very important. We could have multiple players in the game that are much better than either of them, and we don't even talk about them because we're fixated on a two-party system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Divide and distract. Divide and distract. Divide and distract.
Pepsi and Coke. Yeah. You know, that clip is so timely because I think, was it yesterday? Was the anniversary date of the last appearance Bernie had before they pulled the coup?
Yeah.
Here in town. Yeah, a sunny day.
Today is the anniversary, I believe, of getting fired from my job.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Hindsight.
Breonna Taylor. This is the shooting date of Breonna, I believe.
Breonna Taylor.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So wow, that literally happened the same weekend. Everything shut down, and then she got shot.
It seems like it. Yeah.
Wow.
The first announcement that it was a major epidemic, or excuse me, a
pandemic.
Yeah.
A pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's crazy because I've been saying that none of it's isolated. all of these things are, part of
hinged.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting that I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, we'll get back to the two-party system once we finish our Hammer Time segment, but let's get to winner number 2 this week. Fox propaganda channel host Tucker Carlson. I have this story. This is Eleanor Watson and Lee Cohen writing for CBS News. This is dated March 12th. Senior military leaders have condemned viral comments made by Tucker Carlson on a show about women in uniform. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said on Thursday that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin shares the revulsion many senior leaders have expressed about the monologue. Carlson said during a show Tuesday that new grooming standards and inclusive military uniforms for women were making a mockery of the U.S. military. In a monologue, Carlson said China's military has become more masculine, while, quote, our military needs to become, as Joe Biden says, more feminine, end of quote. On Monday, International Women's Day, Joe Biden introduced the nominees for combatant commands who would be the second and third women to ever lead combatant commands. He spoke about the measures the military is taking, like updating grooming standards, like allowing short ponytails to make the environment for all forces more inclusive. Katy,
I'm so
revolved.
pissed. I'm so pissed. I mean, first of all, I hate war. I hate war and I hate military, and I can't justify it. I can't find a good reason that we need it. Right. And the problem with having a feminine military or feminism in the military is that we don't attribute violence to women. Okay, which I like that. We shouldn't be violent. Men shouldn't be violent either. We shouldn't attribute it to anybody. Mm-hmm. So when he says, China's making their military more masculine, what he's saying is their military is becoming more violent. And if we send women in there with babies in their tummies, that's not violent. That makes us look like we actually have empathy and care about human beings. And how will we conquer the world if we do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Let's bring it right back to the basis of the problem here, because I don't want my kids growing up thinking that's how it should be. I don't want my kids to be violent. I don't want them to work against feminism and womanhood and mothering, and because I don't attribute that even just to women. I think we should open up people's minds here instead of I'm so angry because women have saved us generation after generation after generation from complete self-destruction.
It's true. Yeah. Well, did you see Jon Stewart's reaction? He called Tucker a dick. And then, no, he did on TV, on public airways. Then he came back and apologized, I think just yesterday, saying he's sorry. He is apologizing to all dicks.
I thought he was going to call him a small or something.
Yeah, we have to continually bleep that word out because that is not FCC airable.
Well, sorry about that.
What about the guys named Richard? Ouch.
Yeah, there you go. Carlson called these measures a mockery of the U.S. military. Kirby said Thursday, quote, what we absolutely won't do is take personnel advice from a talk show host or the Chinese military. End of quote. Jeez. So then Carlson said this. He responded with a 9-minute monologue Thursday night saying, quote, the Department of Defense launched a large and coordinated public relations offensive against this show. Since when does the Pentagon declare war on a domestic news operation? Can't remember that ever happening, end of quote. Let me stop there. You're not news. You were never meant to be news. You were meant to be GOP TV, which Roger Ailes pitched to Richard Nixon in 1970. Nixon said it would never work. He was wrong. God damn. Fox is not news. It's not.
No, it's not close.
MSNBC is not news. It's propaganda disguised as news.
We don't have any.
See, what you're talking about, Darren, are basic misconceptions. You know, when Katy's talking about the military, the basic concept of the violence and the notion of mixing in femininity and so forth, you have to go to the basic structure, which she did. For example, with the royal family, to have debates whether this was said right or this person said that, you have to go to the basic premise that why the hell do we need a royal family? What function do they serve?
Exactly.
They're archaic. Yeah, so you have to go down to the Fox News premise, like you say. Let's start at the beginning block. They're not news. So every other argument you put on top of that is irrelevant.
Exactly. The basis, the agenda of the royal family is the same basis and agenda of Fox News. It's upholding white supremacy.
Yes, it is.
And we have
That's
done
their history.
Real well at just attributing all this white supremacy to America in the last 10 years, I think. And we've finally taken some responsibility, and we've gotten some transparency and people to look at it, right? And people to really see what's happening here. But what we're doing is we are giving a pass to Britain, to England, to the UK, to Ireland, to all of these countries before us that started this, that have upheld it with their ideology, with their dynasties, with their, royal
imperialism.
Yeah.
Yep.
And imperialism, and now we're going to end up being the trailer park of the West, and the whole world is going to be cool with bombing us into oblivion, okay? And white supremacy is going to keep going if we don't point out the real problem here.
Mm-hmm. That's the preservation we need. I was in a school, Katie, and was teaching Gunga Din and pointed out the racism and so forth, and had a school board member call. His son went home and told him about my analysis of Gunga Din. So that can't be. Britain's not a racist country.
Oh, wow.
I mean, yeah, oh, yeah. So they probably have it banned now in high school.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
I mean, I'm mind blown by how well Cambridge Analytica managed to, everybody thinks they're Russia. Mm-hmm. Everybody attributes Cambridge Analytica to, Russia, and that was not Russia.
No.
Well, we don't really have a royal family here in this country, but
we worship them as our royal family.
But not only just them, we worship, in general, the rich.
Money, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the love of money.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my son on the way home from school the other day. He was talking about somebody we know and how nice her car was. And I just laid it out flat. I said, there are people in this world who identify based on what they have, based on how much money they have. They think that's success. Good. I said, you're not going to be that person. I said, you're going to measure your success by how many other people you've helped, how you've made the world better. I said, nothing you have, you're taking with you. So that's not who you're going to be.
That's very true. God, you're a good mom.
No. He tried to tell me that the other day, too. And I was like, listen, this is a problem because there are no good people and there are no bad people. I was like, that's a really bad concept to believe in. Everybody is capable of both.
But here's the thing. How many parents actually tell their children what you told your son?
I don't think, I think...
Not nearly enough.
True, but I think it's because they're so distracted. Society just does this to us. They put us in this place where we feel like we have to do all these things and focus on all these things to be successful or be good, and none of it matters.
Yeah. It's the easy way to equate human value with the financial value. That, it's easy. It's a non-tangible thing. What makes a person have character and strength and so forth? It's very simple to pull out a bank account number, to prove to give them, validity. I'm reading this Jesus and John Wayne. I think I mentioned it to Darren.
Yeah.
And it talks about the shift in America from the pulpit back 20, 25 years ago, where it used to be a virtue to be, I don't want to say poor, but when your pursuit wasn't, what's the verse about the camel going through the eye of a needle and, non-materialism was equated with Christianity. And then it made this monumental shift. And right here in Grand Rapids, the Christian Reformed, the Calvins, believe that that's testimony of God's choosing if you have a lot of money. Yeah. And they started to push that. That was justification for the greed gospel, et cetera, et cetera. So we've been attacked on all fronts. That's Hollywood has pushed it with the celebrity worship, the Kardashians, and religion has backed up with proving or maintaining that your blessings financially come from God, so you must be pretty good in His sight. It's so sickening.
When I grew up, you're right. There was definitely virtue and struggle in being poor, and now it's the opposite.
Yeah, the Bible verse you mentioned is something to the effect of it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven.
Yes, that's exact. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the antithesis of what they're espousing today. The absolute opposite.
Right. So,
to Bryan Slaton, Texas representative, and to Tucker Carlson, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
That's right. I think you both need to stop being douchebags for different reasons, but you need to get to the same goal.
I would have added, we didn't talk this week, but I would have thrown in the nomination pool, although those are two excellent choices.
Yeah.
But I would have added the woman in the Uber car that went ape on the driver. Did you happen to see that?
I didn't see this.
Yes, I did. Oh, if that was me, I would be going to jail for a very long time because she'd be in the hospital if she coughed on me and grabbed my mask.
Oh, yeah, I definitely missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's disgusting. I think she finally was arrested because they found out she's done it twice before. She's had incidents in other Uber cars.
Yeah,
and,
Uber and Lyft have both banned her.
That's like rape. That's really horrible to do to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it really should be on the same level as rape because you're, endangering somebody's life and you're violating their... Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you a story that I read on Facebook. Somebody had gotten their COVID vaccine, their first dose, earlier this week. I was one of them, too, by the way.
Congratulations.
So I got my first dose. I got to go in for my second one in a couple of weeks. But this woman was saying that there were people scoffing at the people that were there getting their vaccines. And here's my response right here. Scoff around me when I get my second dose, you're going to get a profanity-laced tirade you won't forget anytime soon. And if you lay a finger on me, you're going to the hospital or the morgue. Take your pick. Because I'm done playing with people that deny science. You are idiots. If you deny science, you are a moron. You are an imbecile. Oh, God.
How about the parents taking their kids and having bonfires of masks, celebrating the destruction of the masks?
Throw the parents in the bonfire. Oh, did I say that out loud?
We've got some real dumb parents around here. I've heard stories last week of parents who were organizing Valentine's Day dances for the kids outside of school because they can't do them at school. They don't want them to miss it.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a fellow podcaster out in the world of podcasting. His name is Bryan Slaton. He does a lot of pro wrestling podcasts. Sometimes he has a remedy called throw him in the wood chipper, and that's about what I'm about ready to start advocating. Some of these people really need it.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
Speaking of, I've got this story. This is Akella Lacey and Ryan Grimm writing for The Intercept. This is dated March 8th.
Ooh, I like Ryan.
Did you hear about this?
No.
Well, the Nevada Democratic Party had their elections over the past weekend. We're recording, by the way, on Friday, March 12th, 2021. So over the weekend, on Saturday, Judith Whitmer became the chair of the Nevada Democratic Party. As a matter of fact, progressives won the entire slate. Progressives now control the Democratic Party. So what did all the staffers do? They quit en masse.
Is that right?
Yes.
So Harry Reid's kingdom collapsed, huh?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Not long after Judith Whitmer won her election on Saturday to become chair of the Nevada Democratic Party, she got an email from the party's executive director, Elena Mounts. The message from Mounts began with a note of congratulations before getting to her main point. She was quitting. So was every other employee. And so were all the consultants. And the staff would be taking severance checks with them. Thank you very much. On March 6th, a coalition of progressive candidates backed by the local chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America took over the leadership of the Nevada Democratic Party, sweeping all 5 party leadership positions in a contested election that evening. Whitmer, who had been chair of the Clark County Democratic Party, was elected chair. The establishment had prepared for the loss, having recently moved $450,000 out of the party's coffers and into the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee's account. The DSCC will put the money toward the 2022 re-election bid of Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, a vulnerable first-term Democrat. While Whitmer's opponents say she was planning to fire them anyway, Whitmer denies that claim. She told The Intercept for the latest episode of Deconstructed, quote, "I've been putting in the work. What they just didn't expect is that we got better and better at organizing and out-organizing them at every turn," end of quote. The battle between the insurgent progressive wing of the party and what's known in Nevada as the Reid Machine, a tightly run operation still guided by former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, began 5 years ago when Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders organized support for his 2016 presidential primary run, while Reid was working behind the scenes to help his opponent, Hillary Clinton. Over the next 4 years, outside organizations like DSA exploded in size and strength. The Sanders campaign focused on organizing tens of thousands of young Latino voters in the state with the goal of activating people whom the party hadn't bothered with before. And it worked. In the 2020 cycle, after investing heavily in Nevada, Sanders won a commanding victory in the Nevada caucuses, which, by the way, we reported on this show about this time a year ago. Mm-hmm. When the Sanders campaign ended, the organizers behind it were ready to take their project to the next level. Progressive groups like the Clark County Left Caucus, of which Whitmer was chair, and local DSA chapters had been organizing for Sanders across Nevada since 2016. They used their momentum and the state-level delegates they picked up during the caucuses to continue activating progressive pockets in the state with a focus on local office. Haven't we said on this show, all politics is local?
Mm-hmm.
Progressives led by the Left Caucus won a majority on the state Democratic board this summer, a sign that their momentum was growing even without a candidate at the top of the Democratic ticket to get behind. So this is how you organize. This is the rare example where progressives actually took over the party.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's too rare.
Yeah. I love this. This is beautiful. Let the conservatives, let the oligarchs go home.
So I keep watching first of all, Judith Whitmer.
Yeah.
The chair of the Nevada Party. Anybody know if she's related to Gretchen?
I have no idea. Is she?
It looks like it, only because there's absolutely it's one of the top related Google searches when you put her name in, and there is no answer for the question. There is no answer no matter how far. And there is definitely a Judith Whitmer who was from Grand Rapids that passed away in 2008. So guessing.
Is there a picture?
I don't see a picture.
Okay.
But I'm going to keep looking into this because the fact that it's the first search question and there is no answer for it is very suspect in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we all know how the Democratic Party works. So.
Yeah, we definitely do.
We do.
And the healthcare, the health insurance industry owns it now, and they are very, very much connected to the Whitmers. So.
Well, speaking of the two-party system, the Green Party. Let's talk about House Resolution 1 for a minute here. Because the Green Party has some pretty big concerns regarding H.R. 1. I'm going to read this here. This is actually on the Green Party's website. H.R. 1, also known as For the People Act, is sold as a way to get money out of politics and to protect voters, but it contains several poison pills for democracy and opposition parties like the Green Party. Most alarmingly, H.R. 1 quintuples the amount of money Green presidential candidates will be required to raise to qualify for federal matching funds, from $5,000 in each of 20 states to $25,000 per state. The Green Party stands opposed to the anti-democracy poison pills in H.R. 1, a package that is sold as a voting rights bill, but would actually undermine everyone's right to organize electorally against the parties of Warren Wall Street. In a recent Gallup poll, a record 62% of U.S. voters said we need a new major party. In addition to quintupling the money presidential candidates must raise to access presidential primary public matching funds, other poison pills in H.R. 1 would abolish the general election campaign block grants that parties can access by winning at least 5% of the vote in the previous presidential election. H.R. 1 would eliminate this provision that was created to give a fair shot to alternative parties that demonstrate significant public support. It would replace the general election block grants where each qualified candidate receives a set lump sum of public funding for campaign expenses with matching funds through Election Day, a huge step backwards for public campaign finance reform using the above-mentioned criteria designed to squeeze out alternative parties and independent candidates. Eliminate the limits on donations and expenditures candidates can receive and make. What kind of campaign finance reform is that? And it inflates the amount of money national party committees can give to candidates from $5,000 to $100 million.
No way.
An astonishing increase of 1,999,900%. That would give party bosses virtually unlimited power to flood elections with big money.
Yeah, the establishment's quietly working.
Yep.
H.R. 1 contains some good provisions to combat voter suppression and enact incremental election reforms in the right direction, but democracy depends as much on the right to run for office in elections as the right to vote in elections. As the infamous Boss Tweed said, you can vote for anyone you like as long as I get to pick the candidates.
Yeah.
The anti-democracy poison pills must be removed from H.R. 1 before it can be passed.
Yeah, that should be the freaking slogan of the DNC.
Yep.
Vote for anyone you want because we're picking the candidates.
It might as well be.
Exactly.
They've proved it the last 2 presidential cycles with
They
locking Bernie Sanders out.
They got a court judgment. I mean, they literally get to pick the candidates. There's to pretend like there's democracy after that is such a joke.
Here's what the Green Party recommends. Instead of trying to fool American voters and eliminating alternative party voices, the Green Party calls for real reforms to democratize elections. The Fair Representation Act, introduced in 2018 and 2019, would enact ranked choice voting and multi-member districts for congressional elections, giving voters more power and more choice. Individual state governments should enact ranked choice voting for their elections, including the presidential election, and fully public campaign finance for every federal, state, and local office through the Clean Money, Clean Elections model now used in Arizona and Maine.
So do we know who drafted H.R. 1?
That'd be easy enough to find out here.
I'm going to check that really quick. Because I'm thinking what they need to do is we need some progressive members to come together and draft legislation for the proletariat. Because, when they say for the people, they mean for the rich people. But
that's what it's code.
We really need them to actually do something for people who are working. So they should come and do everything the Green Party's calling for and, have some opposing legislation. But, of course, that would actually be progress, and that would be, accomplishing
What does progress have to do with anything?
It was introduced in the House of Representatives by John Sarbanes, Democrat of Maryland, on January 4th.
Okay.
So there we go.
Thank you so much for checking that out.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, AOC and Ilhan, a few of them could get together and be like...
Bernie.
Yeah, Katy, you're talking about terms, like when you say progressives. And I think a great inducement would be to have somebody say they know the difference between fascism, they know the difference between socialism, they know the difference between communism, and they don't use them interchangeably. So what a progressive means, what a fascist means, what any of these terms mean today, it's completely and totally been transformed. There's no dogmatic meaning to any political discourse anymore. I hear people say stuff that you go, what are you talking about?
You have to decide who you're talking to, and then you know what they mean by it. But it's all the same words. You're right.
Same words. And each strata has a different definition, I guess.
Yeah, and you kind of know based on who you're talking to because you know what their views are. But you're absolutely right. There is no clear definition anymore because they rewrote it all.
Yeah, the H.R. 1 sounds like a good bill, but these poison pills, they definitely need to go.
Every bill. Every bill.
Anti-democratic. Very much so. But very pro-oligarch, so that helps them out.
Exactly. That's how this stuff gets drafted,
An oligarch, speaking of terms like that. We had a show once, Katy. Darren and I, we just went through these terms.
Oh, really?
Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't
the whole show.
That wasn't very long ago. We actually need to do another one of those shows.
That is so important because people really don't know and don't have time to look. Sometimes they'll think they know, and so they just go with what they believe it is.
Yeah, when you said code, what was it? When they say people, they really mean rich people.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And then
and that's not exaggeration.
No, you have to specify people and proletariat.
Well, this is a good point for us to get on out of here for this week. We'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm Darren Gibson.
I'm Katy Steele.
I'm Jack Prince.
For our announcer, Kristen Cook, please support independent media and the First Amendment.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.